Good morning, welcome back to another episode of GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm going to talk about 3 mistakes in this video that could ruin your D&D game or any TTRPG. These 3 mistakes are unfortunately quite common, especially among GMs who haven't had the experience to learn that these things can just tank the experience for your players, and I'm going to talk about each one of them and tell you exactly how to avoid them in this video. You're not going to want to miss it. Let's dive in. People play D&D and other tabletop RPGs to have fun, but you know what's not fun? Not being able to do anything. And that's the first item on this list. This is the first mistake that can tank your TTRPG before it even gets off the ground, not giving your players any options to do anything. Let me give you an example. Let's say that as a GM I say, your characters walk into the next room. It is dark. You look around. You don't see anything. Suddenly, tentacles grab you. They start to pull you apart. I roll damage. You all take 27 points of damage. Then one of the players speaks up and says, whoa, I never said I wanted to walk into the room. And boom, we have a situation where not only were players not given the option to do the thing they want, but also they were thrust into a situation where they didn't even have any options for what to do when the things started happening that they weren't given an option to avoid. And this is a dangerous trap for GMs. So in this situation, instead of saying, you all walk into the room, it's really important for me to say, do any of you want to walk into the room? Or one thing that I sometimes say as a GM, if I'm trying to expedite things, is I say, do any of you not want to walk into the room? You know, it's like, so first of all, we want to make sure that we give our players the option to walk into the room. Secondly, we want to give our players a chance to see something, even if they can't see anything, right? So for example, in this situation, I say, look around, it's all dark. Maybe one of the players raises their hand and says, hey, I'd like to cast a spell. I want to cast True Sight. So this might change things. And it's really important for me to let the player have the option to do that. Some GMs try to rush through things because they have a narrative that they want to try to portray, which is actually a noble gesture because it's a sign of a GM who does care about the story and wants to make it cool for the players. But one thing that it's really important for GMs to remember, and I had to learn this the hard way, is that if we don't give our players the choice, if we don't give our players options, and even more importantly, if we don't allow completely for the players to do something that could impact the scene and give them a chance to impact the scene, you're going to take away a lot of fun because it really sucks to sit there as a player and to feel like I can't even do anything. I'm just listening to the GM tell a story. It's really important that as GMs, we let every single player try to do things, and then we give them lots of room to interact with the world. And this is what I generally refer to as a player-led storyline arc. You know, we want to put things in front of the players for them to interact with, but we want the story to follow the players. The real story isn't what the GM thinks of as being the plot. The real story is what the characters are doing with what the GM has presented them with. Let them be creative. Let them break your game. When I say break your game, I don't mean let them just ruin the game for themselves and everyone else. That's part of our job, is to set parameters. However, what we do want to do is we want to let them break the plans of the bad guy, of the universe, of fate, of destiny. We want to let them mess with it and make the story their own. This is what we really want. So the best thing would be, when I say to the players, instead of walking into the room, I say, would you guys like to walk into this room? And then maybe one player says, I want to shine my lantern in there first. I just want to stick the lantern in and see if I can see anything. I'm going to be like, okay, roll perception. They roll perception. I say, you see that along the walls are tentacles coiled as if ready to strike. And then the wizard says, oh, screw that. I'm casting fireball in there. Everyone back up. And I say, the fireball hits. It explodes. You hear searing and sizzling as the room lights up and the tentacles light on fire and they start to fall off of the walls. It seems as though this tentacle trap has been disfigured, destroyed, dismembered. The trap is no more. Now you see just barren, albeit scorched rock walls with little pockets where the tentacles used to be. Giving the players this kind of agency to let them do stuff like this, which might seem like as a GM kind of a bummer if you plan this awesome tentacle fight in this room and they just knock it out with a single fireball. You might think to yourself, well, that's kind of a bummer. But the truth is that no, this is a great victory. You let your players interact in a realistic way. Realistic is relatively speaking, of course. We are playing a TTRPG, but you let them interact with it and you let them create the story and progress it. You let their characters accomplish something. And let me tell you something, as a GM, letting your players accomplish things that matter will make them feel so good. And it is so much fun as a player to get to do that. And so if you let your players do these things, you are winning. I'm not trying to say that every encounter should be steamrollable. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that letting the players do things that matter is so crucially important at every single step. And that leads us to problem number 2 that can ruin your game and just make it not fun for the players. And that is a lack of NPC interaction. I have in my life been very fortunate as a player to get to play in games where there was amazing NPC interaction, where the NPCs were a vital, crucial part of the game, and it made it so much more funner. And I have been also a part of games where there was absolutely nearly zero NPC interaction whatsoever. And let me tell you something, there is no question about which one was more fun. The NPC interactions were so much more fun, made the game so much more fun versus the games where there was almost no NPC interactions. Those games really felt sort of limited. They felt kind of constricting and they just felt sort of stale to me. Whereas the campaigns with the great NPC interactions really felt alive and felt diverse and felt just a lot more fun. And fun is kind of the key word here. So as a GM, this is pretty simple. Put NPCs, put bad guys, put villagers, put shopkeepers into your games and role play them. Try to make those situations interactive. Try to make them engaging for the players. Let the players interact with NPCs. Let them roll insight checks. Let them succeed if they make good rolls. Let them roll perception checks. Let them notice weird things. Let them persuade. Let them deceive. Let them seduce. All of the above. And let them interact with the NPCs because this is part of the life-giving element of TTRPGs. When you put great NPCs in your games and you role play them great, this makes your games better versus if you don't have any NPCs in your games, or you have NPCs, but they're just like blocks of flesh that walk around and don't really interact. This is going to take away from the fun, and this could take away so much fun that it makes your campaign not as fun as it deserves to be. That leads us to problem number 3, not enough scenery descriptions. Scenery descriptions are not always easy for everyone. Personally, I tend to have a pretty fun time describing scenery. Because of my writer background, I would say that I probably have more practice with this than most people. And I feel like this is a really fun thing. But until I started playing in some games where there was no scenery description, I didn't really understand how important this was. I have played in games where there were amazing descriptions of scenery. And when I say amazing, it doesn't have to be like an eloquent Shakespearean monologue. I just mean like when I walk into a room, do I get a pretty good sense of what's in the room and does it feel immersive to me? Or when I walk into a room, am I kind of left without really understanding what's going on? Let me give you an example. Here's one example of what I would call a very limited kind of like a scenery explanation description that doesn't really give us much information. So you walk into the tavern. There is a bar. There's people drinking at it. What would you like to do? Okay, so this gives us at least a little bit of information about what's going on in there. And if you are the GM who's kind of planning on your players going to the bar and getting a drink, then maybe this could seem like it is enough and it maybe saves time, lets the players just do the thing they're going to do. With that being said, let's turn it back on fun for the players. Let's turn it back on what's most fun for them. You might feel like the players don't want to hear me give a multi-sentence description of this room, but in my experience as a player, this is actually not true. Players love descriptions. They love to hear if there's interesting stuff going on because the truth is that your players are probably not going to do exactly what you think they want to do. They're probably going to walk in there and they're probably going to interact with something you describe if you describe something interesting. And this is a lot of fun because it makes players feel like, hey, I'm going to do something cool and important. So let me give you another example of a more descriptive scenery description, and you can kind of see the difference. You walk into the tavern. The first thing you notice is the glow of the lights. There's a fireplace over in the side of the room. There are some chairs around it. Some older human gentlemen seem to be seated around this elderly elf man who seems to be telling a story. He's smoking a pipe. You see that there's a chandelier made of deer antlers, and there's candles all over it. And the candles are glowing brightly, adding to the ambiance. There's like 10 tables in here, and each table has a centerpiece that is like a lamp with a glass shield on it. Not like a camping lantern, but like a kind of a fancy lantern, one that would befit a tavern table. You also see that there's a bar made of red oak. The bar seems old, worn, but nicely cleaned, polished. There are bar stools at the bar, and you see a variety of people standing at the bar drinking. There are a handful of elves that seem to be in a group. You see there's one orc standing by himself at the far end. He is nursing a tall ale and looking almost angrily down into his cup as if he's deep in thought about something. The bar keep is a rather voluptuous human gentleman with a balding head of hair, little glasses on his nose, and a chin that sticks out just a little bit more than usual. He speaks with a squeaky voice as he takes your drink orders, and he also offers the mutton as an upsell. If you are a hungry adventurer, you should definitely try the mutton and the bread. The tables are all occupied, save one that is sort of near the bar. It is unoccupied, but it seems that it has not yet been cleared. There are dirty dishes strewn upon it. It seems that you've walked into the tavern at a busy time. Now, one thing that you notice there isn't any of is there is no music. In fact, you hear zero music. All you hear is kind of the din of conversation, the clamoring of drinks, of forks on plates, and the shuffling of chairs as people move about. And while the atmosphere is warm and inviting, you do sense that it is a little bit lacking in festivity. Now, roll me a perception check. And maybe someone rolls a great perception check. I'm going to say, so there is one table that gets your attention that seems kind of interesting. You see that there's a table in the far side of the room, and there are four what look like small folk sitting at the table. But you notice that while they're wearing cloaks, their cloaks every once in a while kind of flutter a bit, almost as if there's something under the cloaks that is like being hidden, that's moving. And they are little. They're like 3 feet tall at the tallest. There's one that's like 2 feet tall. In fact, they're so little that they can't sit on the chairs. They're standing on the chairs to eat their meal. Maybe the wizard says, can I roll and see what's maybe under their cloaks? I might say, yes, roll me a perception check. Perception roll. You think they have wings. Perhaps they are some kind of fey creature. In fact, now that you look at them, they do look fey-like, and they have long pointed ears, and they have actually very beautiful, bright jewelry and kind of like strangely exotic facial markings, little blues and pinks here and there. They just seem a bit otherworldly. Now, with that being said, this description has allowed for a more, let's say, detailed view of what's going on. Also, it has incorporated interaction from the players, and that's exactly what we want. We want players to interact with our rooms, and we want to give them as much information as we can that they could then use to make decisions about what they're going to do next. And this really brings up another point of like, a lot of GMs get concerned that maybe if they allow this much, I'll call it agency with their players, will it ruin their plots? Will it ruin their plans? And the answer is yes. If you give your players agency, it's probably going to ruin your plot ideas, but that's okay. Because remember, the safe, the right, the fun thing to do as a GM is to make the actual plot what the characters choose to do. And then to just put the stuff in front of them that would naturally be in front of them and on a common sense basis based on your world and the story you're telling. With that being said, if you do struggle to come up with plot arcs, I have something that might help you. I have a free ebook called The Ultimate Plot Randomizer. If you sign up for my email list, link is in the description. You will get this free in your first email. You can random roll plot arcs for days using 4 D100 tables. You can random roll the hook, the conflict, the conclusion, and even wild wacky stuff so that you can put together plot arcs, put your own creative twist on them, put them into your games. And hey, even if the players change the story 10 times, you can just roll new plot arcs and be ready to go at a moment's notice with this ebook. So again, this is free. Link is in the description. Just sign up for my email list and you will get this free in your first email. So that will actually probably help you a lot. Another thing I'd like to ask you to consider is signing up for my Discord. If you like to kind of discuss these things, player agency versus plot, talking about how to give players more agency, how to make the game more fun for your players, I and a whole bunch of other GMs are always talking about this in my Discord. It's a free Discord. We are up to almost 200 members at this point, which is awesome. You can join us for free. Just click the link down in the description, jump in, say hi. If you like TTRPGs and you like Discord, this is a no-brainer. Pop in and say hi. We would love to see you and hang out with you and talk to you. So it's pretty awesome in there. Stuff going on every day. You can also find games in there, or if you're a GM looking to start a game, you could start a game and look for players in there. We have a channel specifically devoted for looking for games. So that's pretty awesome. With that being said, that's going to conclude this one. The 3 things that I think really can have the potential to tank a good game, but if you can do a little bit better in these 3 things, and then just make an effort to put them into your games, hey, you are going to have way more successful games. People are going to love your games. You may even become their favorite GM of all time, and you're going to have a bunch of players who never want to stop playing with you, which will be awesome. So there you have it. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm here every morning creating videos about the best game in the world, D&D. So I will see you awesome people on the next one.